Eli Reed. I'm located in Umatilla, Florida. We're here on my homestead that's been developed over the past 4 years, I'd say. We're in zone 9B, a pretty unique microclimate. We're on south-facing slope on a lake with oaks, so I'm able to push stuff that I wouldn't recommend even people up the street would grow. Camping, and the pond that we were getting water from actually had an inch thick layer of ice in Ocala, 30 minutes away. And then I come back here and I have all this stuff. So it's nuts. I can't give advice to local people about how to grow all this stuff because it's like, unless you have everything that I have, I can't tell you to grow these things. I can tell you to experiment because it's always worth experimenting. If I had listened to, when I went to nurseries and they said, oh, you gotta have this in a greenhouse, so you gotta protect it. If I listened to them and decided not to buy it over that, I wouldn't have any. I wouldn't have the sugar apples, no Starfruit. I would have nothing. I'd have peaches, and I hate ground peaches. Here's the praying hands. That's one of the main pups that comes up. And this is a Kokopo that's already had its main pups pulled off. And you see all these little tiny ones. Yeah. You can get dug up and put in little 4-inch pots like this. You can see that's how small it was when I planted it. And it's, tissue culture size, but without the whole tissue culture. Like here's the little 4-inch pot. You see what I'm starting with. Those are like little eyes plucked off. Tiny little banana. And you see some of them look like they'll die. They start rotting back and they look awful, and then they take and grow. Some of them never take. Sitting. It's been out of the ground for months now, and I've pulled maybe like 20 or 30 pups off of it just laying in the ground. There's another one I just trying to make. It's probably not going to make any more that are decent. You can see all the points that I've pulled off pups from. Well, I had just found this sugar apple right here, which is 2 years old. I always heard 2 to 3 years you get fruit, and now I have living proof. Not a big one, but it flowered a lot this year. All my sugar apples flowered pretty good. This is probably its fruiting test run. Next year it'll probably produce a pretty good amount. It's grown a whole lot this year too. I think they start flowering around June. It probably set fruit maybe early August because it didn't have anything around July and August. It was flowering, and I was checking it every day, and I wasn't seeing anything. And I just found this today, and it doesn't look that big, so it hasn't even started really having any separation. So it's probably early August, which is very, very late. Usually they're starting to set fruit in June and July. This is a sapodilla. This set fruit last year. It flowered in fall, and it set its fruit, and the fruit overwinters. So this spring, after that January frost, I got to harvest it. So, oh, look at this. It actually set a fruit. The main problem I have here is ants. It doesn't really seem to stunt it too much. It's ants farming aphids, and I've done everything in the book. Cinnamon seemed to work pretty good, but it rains every day, so that works good for a day. I'm going to try some organic ant traps. If it's the dry season like spring and you have ant problems and your stuff's not going to get washed off, yeah, do cinnamon, that works. But other than that, I haven't found anything. Mike from Fruit Jungle Project, he was talking about how in Brazil they would harvest citrus that had fallen on the ground, filled it in a 5-gallon bucket, fill that with water, wait for that blue kind of mold to appear on them, and that is supposedly like a natural ant repellent. So I'm trying that out. He's saying that it's the fungus that's repelling them, so we'll see. I didn't think that this was going to work, but here I have black pepper. I think I got this back in 2019. It set some corns last year, but they weren't really developed, and this year it has a whole bunch of them. And it grows right up the wall, no trellising. I would have been concerned about it digging into stucco and pulling off stucco, but when the branches die off, it just rubs off. It's just like how dragon fruits fuse to palm trees and stuff. This is really cool. It looks like an ornamental plant, but it's like my favorite scratch and sniff that I smell.
Nice.
This is allspice. This is also maybe 3 years old. I don't know its cold tolerance, but it's never been protected. It's right by the house. So, and I think it's got some fruit on the back. Go ahead and pick those. These are a lot bigger than the ones from last year. And I'll probably just plant those. It's just, you know, every time we get to walk by here, when I do a tour, I get to do what I just did to you, pull off the leaf, get them to smell it. You know, usually they say like Thanksgiving or like sweet potato casserole, stuff like that. And it's just smells like childhood holiday memories. So why wouldn't you want to grow that to have it year round? It's still a pretty good fruit. It's set fruit basically year round. Same with all Starfruit. Does get quite large. I'm probably gonna have to prune it soon. I have another variety. I think it's Dwarf Hawaiian, and it has maybe more fruit, better developed, you know, better shape, a lot bigger, but like a quarter of the size of this one. That got that big pretty quickly, so it'll get out of reach fairly quickly. So if you're someone that's, you know, has kids or is a little bit older and you don't want to climb up a rickety ladder to get your fruit, it's not really a good buy. But for me, I don't really care. I want them to get big because I want it to be a chunk fly. Here's the oldest sugar apple, and by oldest I mean maybe 3 or 4 years old. Last year it set pretty good fruit, pretty heavy crop. All of them were pretty decently formed. This year not so much, probably from the cold, but
that's the biggest
still,
one I've ever seen.
This one? You should have seen the...
I see this. You posted
that
one,
one,
right? Like recently?
That one was like twice the size. It was 19 ounces, which is what, like a pound, 3 ounces? That one's probably only like 10 or 12. Since I have an ant problem, you basically have to pick them a day or two before they actually ripen, because these like to crack. Just rain or no rain, they just naturally crack open. The stem that connects to the core of the fruit will start to open and ants will go in it. It's sugar apple. They go after the sugar. So if you don't pick it a day before, and I like to leave stuff on the tree as long as possible to ripen, but if you don't pick it a day before, you basically have to put the sugar apple infested with ants in a plastic bag and throw it in the fridge. Wait for the ants to get knocked out from the cold and then wash them out. I haven't seen a big difference in taste, so as long as you're not picking them, you know, extremely early, like a week early, you should be good. But I'm hoping having this foundation of sugar apples, bringing in that, you know, specialty pollinator, that when I do get flowers on the Ademoya, I won't have to hand pollinate. Hopefully there'll be enough of them. And last year there was a lot of them. They were like, you can just actively watch them, and they're small, but you can see like clouds of them going from flower to flower. Some of the branches have scales on them. What can you do? It sets good fruit, so I don't really worry about it. Then we can go back here. This is the Agroforestry row that I put in. So I'm hoping, and so far it's worked, I'm hoping this Agroforestry row that I can keep expanding and keep running all the way down to hopefully the lake will act as a living weed barrier. So far it's working. I'm hoping it does that because you can mulch all you want, but if you don't stop those weeds from coming in somehow, they'll just run right over the mulch. If you don't plant something living that you want, you're going to have the stuff take over that you don't want. This is maybe, I think I planted it mid-July. So, and everything was from cuttings, all the support plants anyways. The fruit trees were either bought or gifted or transplanted from here. It's done pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. All the Napier grass, I started from cuttings in 4-inch pots, at least the bigger ones were already in pots. Some of the ones down the row were just direct planted from cuttings. This banana circle was already here before I did the agroforestry row, but the hole was dug, some plants were planted, but I never actually filled the hole with any organic matter. I never really took care of it. I never mulched it. So when I was cleaning all the weeds out of the way of the agroforestry row, I was piling them up in this hole, and then I mulched over top of them. And when I just finished it, it was maybe like up to here. And that was mid-July, I think. So in what, 2 months, it's broken down. It's already sunk, and it's already like the best stuff. Bananas don't really care about if the soil's done or not. I've seen, you know, more banana roots in mulch than actually in the soil. And then praying hands, I'm probably gonna have to, both the Dwarf Brazilian and the praying hands, soon as it fruits, I'm probably going to dig up the corm and do macro propagation. Just because I want to dig them up anyways, and I might as well do something with the corm. And I know if you just dig them up and leave them there, they'll grow out pups. So you might as well stimulate it to do the best that it can and produce as many pups as you can, and have some sitting in the greenhouse ready to go. If you're harvesting pups pretty intensively and, you know, not as well like I was, and just digging them out from whenever they are, whatever time you want to dig them out, eventually it seems like that corm connection that makes these plants, you know, the second or third generation pup just, you know, take off and get 20 feet tall. That's not there anymore because you've disconnected that somehow, or you've caused an infection that has rotted through the middle. And I'm seeing that with these. That Dwarf Brazilian with the fruit on it is like the same size plant and the same size fruiting as like a first gen pup. If I were to dig up a plant, plant it somewhere, let it establish on its own and grow on its own, the fruit and the size of the plant would be the same as that. And that's like fourth generation. They should be massive. You know, the one before it was twice the size as that one. So I think it's just outgrowing its connection. Macro propagating, you basically just digging up the corm, shaving off all of the green growth or the leaf growth, cutting off all the roots, and then I've seen some people peel the first layer of skin off. I've done it with and I've done it without, and I have about the same amount of propagation. But you're basically just digging up that corm and cutting off any pups that are already there, putting it in something like wood chips, vermiculite. I've seen in India they use straw, and then you're putting it somewhere where it stays humid and is shady. So you'll get 2 or 3 or 4 big ones that pop out. You remove those as soon as you can or as soon as you want to, and that seems to shock it into making smaller ones that basically look like little tissue cultures. And I have some in that greenhouse. That greenhouse is like my banana greenhouse. We'll walk around and see that. But those seem to do really good when you're putting them in pots. I've dug up pups that are like 3-gallon size and put them in pots, and compared to putting them right into the ground, they don't seem to do as good. They don't recover as fast. But those small ones, they recover in like a week or 2. Most of the time, you know, you'll always get failures, but you can have 20 or 30 of one variety, all small size, not taking up a lot of space, and they're bananas still. You treat them right in the ground, they're gonna take off. I really like to keep bananas on the edge of everything, just because you see how much it impedes on everything. It takes up a lot of space, and I'd rather have a fruit tree or something there and have these guys on the edge producing that shade somewhere where invasive weeds can come in.
Yes, right.
Because I've seen it, if you get them growing dense enough, you don't have weeds underneath bananas. I like to plant bananas in the space of where I'm going to put a fruit tree on new plantings. If I don't have that fruit tree yet, if I know I'm not going to have a fruit tree for a couple months, because chances are I'm going to put wood chips there. I'm going to be producing biomass with it, chopping and dropping the leaves. The leaves naturally funnel water to the trunk, and it runs it right down to that area, and that feeds all the microbes. I have an example down there that is like right at the base. You have as deep as you can dig of just solid black, like the best soil you can think of, and then 5 feet away, not even 5 feet away, maybe 2.5 feet away, it's normal-ish, you know, sandy, gray Florida soil. Treated the same, just mulched, but because that banana is funneling water to the base, it's feeding all the stuff that breaks down that mulch faster. Here's that Dwarf Hawaiian. You see the fruit is a lot better developed. It's a lot heavier set. It's just a lot smaller of a tree. That's pretty manageable for someone that's just like, they just want to grow a couple fruit trees. They're not really getting into, you know, growing a weed jungle like I am. And the taste is pretty good. It's not too bad. Here's another one. This another seedling sugar apple. Maybe about the same age as the one up front, maybe younger. It flowered this year. I don't think it set any fruit, but it has grown a lot, and I'm sure next year probably set some fruit. It's on the road to be a pretty well producing tree. They just kind of grow as the perfect shape that I want them to do, so I don't have to do any pruning. They grow as like a single leader up to like chest height for this one, and then they start to branch off. I'll probably do some tip pruning just to make it grow like a little bit of a bush. But this is a seedling jackfruit. I got it about the same time I got that black pepper. This one and that seedling up there have both produced male flowers. So maybe I can get it to fruit, but it got pretty heavily damaged. All the foliage got damaged and most of the lateral damage got cut back in half, but didn't get any trunk damage, and that's really what matters in the end. But it's from seed. Buy a jackfruit from the store or go down south and actually get some good varieties. And you can get like 50 seeds from one jackfruit. You can have those things everywhere. They're not hard to start. They don't require a lot of nutrients. They don't require a lot of care. Keep the weeds off of them for a month and then they'll be head height in 6 months. Right next to it, there's coffee, which I was experimenting with because coffee is another one of those things that I always see in greenhouses. It's not really a thing that you can grow outside. But I had some friends over a month or two ago that are in Paisley, which is even more north and more or less deeper in the Ocala National Forest, and it gets a lot colder for them, and they have a pretty big coffee plant that produces like a harvestable amount of cherries. Like they could probably start making their own coffee. They're hobbyist gardeners. They're not like, they're just starting out. They're new, and that was their experiment, and it was 100% successful. They have it, you know, full of like at Luke's, an A Natural Farm in Howie. He has one in the greenhouse that just produces a crazy amount of coffee cherries, and theirs is about the same size. No greenhouse up in Paisley, same amount of coffee cherries. So this is all relatively new. This plot specifically, which is always astounding to people, was planted the last week of December. So all these bananas were pups last week of December. But when I was saying earlier about how the soil is like the best stuff you can think of at the base, this is exactly where I was talking about. So, and I never put any compost here, just mulch. I just recently fertilized it last week, so that doesn't really account to the size of them. This is all just proper placement. You know, this was a great spot. My entire life growing up here, this little area got all of the water from the entire street. It would always be standing water whenever it rained, so I knew it was a good spot. And the life was already here to support all this stuff. So this is what it's made. As far as I can dig until I start hitting roots, it is just solid goop. And then right over here, you can find normal-ish. It's still a little bit better than regular Florida sand, but it's not as good as what's right here. A lot more soft. This is a lot sandier. This is a lot fluffier. It still has good structure. Still does what it's supposed to. It's supposed to, I've heard that good soil is supposed to be able to clump into a ball but break apart easily, but still, you can see what the result is. These things were planted as pups from my property, bare-rooted pups in the last week of December. They got dusted by that January frost, and they already have pups. They're already massive. If I was selling pups, I already have a product to sell. I'm probably going to try my best and just hold off from harvesting any pups. I'm going to grow them like I'm supposed to, but, you know, when you're just starting out and you have all this land and you don't have this many pups, as soon as you get a pup, you dig them up. You got that expansion itch. You got to go out and plant more stuff, and you don't want to have to go out and buy it. I'm going to do it like it's supposed to, because I know exactly what's going to happen if I start harvesting those. I'm going to have the repeat of what's up there, you know. Poor bananas that either fruit with undeveloped racks, or they'll take so long that they'll fruit in winter and get dusted by the cold, have no leaves in a rack and never develop, and it's a whole year wasted. So I'm hoping I still have time. If one were to fruit now, I've had bananas fruit in September, and I still get a good rack before the cold hits, you know, 4 or 5 months. It's not going to be great because half the time the metabolism is going to be shut down, but it's still better than having it fruit in January and you have to cut it down and restart. Got a bunch of sugar apples started. Bunch of lemon drop mangosteens. I bought a box of fruit, and it's almost 100% germination rate. You know, you get some failures, but you know, you get 20 of them. That's enough for anyone, really. We got sugar apples, and we have custard apples as well. And then I have this weird anomaly. It's either a seedling of an Adamoya or a sugar apple, but for some reason all the leaves that it produces are rounded. I was asking Lonnie about this, and he was saying that it looks like a Cherimoya seedling, but I don't have any Cherimoyas. I've never even eaten a Cherimoya, so I wouldn't have been able to get seed.
It's both a tripod and a cooking spit, so you can take this top bar here off and you can run it through these hooks, stand it up like a tripod if you're doing something like a large cauldron or a big Dutch oven. Most of the time I keep it set up like this, and what we'll do is we go to big campouts. Everybody has Dutch ovens and stuff, and we can set a couple here. You can do your breakfast, you can do your coffee, you can do everything all at once, or you can get a couple of them, make like a V out of them, and you can have a fire in the middle there. You have all kinds of stuff. So you can raise and lower it with the hooks to adjust your temperature and get different zones of the fire and all that. And I had a Sea-Doo trailer. I have unlimited access to scrap. I made a large, it's not super big. I got in a group, I watched people do like 1,000 gallons of